Hello and welcome to the Power of Data podcast. I'm Susan McKay, Chief Marketing Officer at Dun Bradstreet, and I'm here today with Rich Cooper, who's the Data and Insight Manager at AFC Bournemouth, the Premier League football club. We're delighted to have you here, Rich.
Great to
welcome.
be here. Thank you. Yeah.
Now, when we think about data and we think about football, we think about data that fuels football performance when it comes to players, shots on goal, passes, tackles, etc. But there's also a business side to the data that fuels the customer experience. And I just want to be clear with our audience up front that we'll be talking about the latter today, not the former. And I know that people would be very interested in how you ended up in this type of role. It's quite unique. So maybe we can just start with you telling us a little bit more about your background and how you ended up in the football industry.
Yeah, sure. I mean, as an 18-year-old, I'd never thought for myself to end up in the world of football. I think if I step back, it was a series of circumstances. So at school, at A-levels, the thing that I found myself thriving on was actually A-level computing. And I remember learning how to build like databases and things like that, and did really well in my project. And that was the first time probably in my school life I actually thought there might be a kind of path for me. So I ended up doing that at A-level computing. That then led on to doing a degree in IT. I still wasn't really sure what I wanted to do at that point, but it felt like a good thing to follow on from the computing side of it. So I did a 4-year degree. And the reason that led me to Bournemouth actually was in the third year, you had to do a placement year. And I wasn't the most organised at that point in my life as a student. And I remember looking at there's a jobs board with all the placement opportunities. And the last job that was left pinned on there was one in Bournemouth, and it was working for an insurance company. And so really I had no choice. That was my kind of destiny. And I ended up taking that job as like a year-long placement student. And this was the time, showing my age, but it was the year 2000. And so I went in a job basically doing year 2000 testing and a bit of database stuff. I ended up being there for 5 years. And that was my first kind of proper job, essentially. And I remember really enjoying it there. Moved up to the head office. I was like a senior data analyst at the time. And then randomly got stuck in the car park. There was an accident on the motorway. None of us could get out. And I was just thinking to myself, there's some of the plant I see about traveling. So the next day I quit my job and I went traveling for a year, which was quite a nice breaker there. And afterwards I came back. Then I got a job at JP Morgan investment bank.
Yeah.
Did that for 5 years, really honed my data skills and experience. And again, did that for 5 years. And then I had another calling to do something different. And then I pivoted and I went to work at an insurance company. And that was looking at financial crime data. So that really piqued my interest about spotting trends and patterns, trying to identify criminal behaviour. And I loved that role. That was a 10-year role. And then, but that role became redundant. And I didn't work for 5 months. I was looking for a job. Funnily enough, actually used a Dun Bradstreet product at that time, a DB and Hoover's database. We could search companies and research companies and reach out to companies. And so did this big job search, couldn't find anything for 5 months. And then one morning, I was offered 5 jobs in one morning after not having a job for how many months. And I had to choose between financial services, all the kind of sensible jobs. And then I was offered the AFC Bournemouth job and I had to make a call. And it was more of a head versus a heart. But because I was a supporter of AFC Bournemouth at the time, and it was a couple of down the road, I just felt I could do something different. I actually went for that job, and that was near about 3.5 years ago. So, yeah, that's been my journey to date.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So started out as a data geek, which I guess you could say is gold dust these days,
Yeah.
but maybe wasn't in those days. So you're a football fan. It must have been an amazing few seasons for you watching Bournemouth come up to the Premier League, hold their space, be way out of the relegation zone. Can you comment as a fan?
Yeah, I mean, I've supported the club for 20 years. I wasn't originally a Bournemouth fan. I wasn't originally from Bournemouth, but as soon as I moved to Bournemouth and I started going to the games, I got sucked in. So I started supporting the club in League Two, and it's been a real interesting journey observing that from afar. And then when you get the chance to step inside that and understand how football works, it's been a really interesting journey. I mean, I joined the club when the championship and we went up that year. So it's been a really interesting insight to see how it works on the pitch and off the pitch. And the thing I love about data is that you're working with every different department, and you really have to understand how the club works operationally as well to be able to work with data. So yeah, it's been great. I don't think you could have probably foreseen a position where we've had our highest points finish, and some of the football we played this year has been the best I've ever seen. And I always sort of remind people is remember this, because we're at a real pinnacle at the moment, and with the new training centre and everything else and the direction the club we're going, it's just really exciting times at the moment. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Really nice to be a part of, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit then, because a lot of our listeners will be from the corporate world.
Yeah.
Right. So they'll be interested in how data obviously can fuel their customer experience, improvement and optimization of that. So how would you think that football clubs might differ from your traditional companies when it comes to data usage?
Yeah. Well, having worked in the corporate world for 20 plus years, it was interesting going from that world into a sports world. And the main difference is the corporate world's very much more established. So the systems are quite established. The processes are more established. You have quite big teams. You have compliance teams, audit teams, you have data teams, you have operational teams. And everything for me is around fine-tuning. Things don't change much. When you come into the world of football, if I'm honest, it was quite a bit of a change, and it took me a while to adjust. But the main differences are football, the world tends to be more reactive, more responsive, more agile. So in the corporate world, you could maybe spend 6 months to a year planning for a change of system or an event or something else like that. With football, one day something can happen, and then you suddenly have to pivot and work towards that. And it could be anything. It could be a new player signing. It could be suddenly a change of system. It could be a new product that's come to market that needs to be launched. It could be a ticket that we need to sell for a game that's just been put on for 3 days' notice. So it's very much being able to pivot and react to what's happening and not be as forecasting 12 months, 2 years in the future, essentially.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the back end system. What about when it comes to the fans and the spectators? How do you make sure they're getting the best possible experience?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time over the last couple of years investing in systems and people. I mean, the club has grown significantly since my time was there. When I first joined, there was maybe one person in marketing, a couple of people in commercial. So as with the evolution of the club, we have put resource into it. In terms of a customer journey, it's understanding where all the touch points data there are and trying to piece all that together, and trying to understand all those different data sources. And I'll give you an example, but we do a lot of survey data. We're trying to understand how people respond to the promotions that we're doing or the games they're coming to. There's like an annual Premier League survey. There's a club survey. Sometimes if we're doing like a women's game, we'll do surveys there. So there's a mixture of data sources. The survey data is quite organic, and it's trying to piece that together with our system data. So we have information about ticketing purchases. We have information about retail purchases. We have information about what time people are renting the stadium. The challenge is joining all that together. And in a corporate world, you might have big internal data tech teams harvesting all that data, having a big internal data source. With us, it's trying to experiment a bit more with data and work out what works. And it could be like we have lots of social media data. We understand where our fans are. But essentially, a lot of it is experimentation, pivoting, and just seeing what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're getting a lot of quantitative data, but you need to overlay that with some qualitative data around the fans' experience and what they'd like to see more of, and so on, right?
Exactly that, yeah.
Yeah, and so how do you ensure that kind of through the collection and analyzing process that the data is accurate and up to date?
Yeah, it's funny when people think about data, sometimes they think about all the fancy stuff. In my career, and especially at the club, a lot of our time and effort is spent making sure data is right and clean. And fortunately, we've got a very small team. There's two of us, but we've both got a very high attention to detail and making sure things are right. And the issue is sometimes when you're having system data isn't always put in correctly, or is data missing. So there's a lot of our job is cleaning, checking, making sure that it's all been put together right. There's a lot of kind of stuff that's going on behind the scenes to make sure that the outcomes are based on good data. So yeah, I mean, we're going for a big ticketing migration at the moment, and a lot of that is you're taking system data from one system, putting it into a new system, and making sure that is good and clean, and not using poor quality data. So there's a number of things we can do.
Yeah, including, I guess, third-party sources as well to enhance your data and fill some of the gaps you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, and there's lots of different third-party data sources we can use to enhance our current data systems. I think that sometimes the challenge in the football world is that there are so many external data sources, so many companies that want to get into football.
Yeah.
And my emails are full of sales pitches, companies promising that they can do this and the other. And a lot of the time it's having conversations with these companies and other clubs and going, okay, for this budget, what's going to be our biggest return? You know, we could spend loads of money on different systems, but actually what's the marginal gain? And it's understanding one year we may use one system, the next year we may use another system, just to work out what works best for the club.
Testing and trialing until you get to the right outcome.
Yeah, there's a lot of agility there. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah. And so your competitors must be doing a lot of this, I imagine. I don't think it's unique to Bournemouth. Yeah. How much collaboration do you have between your competitors? Yeah. Do you see this as a competitive differentiator, or are there things you can share?
I think one of the things I really love about working in football is the collaboration side. On the pitch, obviously, there's competition. You mentioned before around there's the data, the football side of data, and then there's more the commercial operation side of data. I think it's fair to say on the player side, they're probably not going to be collaborating on data because there's a big competitive edge. In terms of our world, we're not necessarily competing for fan base. You support your team. You know, you're not unlike sport have two favourite teams. So it's a really, really collaborative space. And one of the things that works so well is the ability to talk to other football clubs and for them to be really, really open about what they're doing. And, you know, just some tangible examples, like we have a WhatsApp group with different clubs, and somebody might say, we're thinking about this new system. Have you used it? What do you think? Or we've got this particular problem we're trying to solve at the moment. And actually, what always constantly surprising is how willing other people are to help each other. I mean, we've hosted other clubs. They've come down to our club. We've talked through our systems and our data, and we've shared our pain points, what works well. We've bought products based on other clubs endorsing those products, which has been really, really key, actually. And there's been, other examples. So it's a really good, really nice community. Everyone's really helpful. And everyone's really willing to give up the time. And again, it helps. We go to Premier League forums as well, and there might be a specialised commercial one, a data marketing one. And again, the encouragement is to collaborate and share ideas together. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So why don't we turn that on its head then? Because it's great to hear that there's collaboration amongst the clubs. You might expect that if it's kind of a non-compete area, but can data and data strategies actually act as a differentiator? Can it give you a competitive edge if you get it right?
Yeah, definitely. I think on the commercial side, let's say we're trying to attract new sponsors or partners. I think it's really important. You know, Bournemouth as a club, we have a smaller fan base. but we definitely want to be different in terms of being quite creative and play on the fact that we're, the location we've got. And actually, we've all got some fantastic staff who can create packs or digital stories to really give an edge over other clubs as well. So I think that differentiator is really important when it comes to commercially and attracting new partners.
That's good.
Yeah.
That is good. And that is pretty interesting, actually. So if I think about this, then in a way, as a smaller club, you need to be more agile.
Yeah.
How do you innovate to kind of take advantage of the fact that you're smaller, but you're growing fast?
Yeah, I think...
And you've had a great season.
Yeah, exactly. I think, funny enough, we talk about setups of different clubs. There's a corporate element to this, but when I came to football, there was less red tape. There was less, the timescales were less in terms of getting things done. When I speak to people at some bigger clubs, they have sometimes more of a corporate setup, and there's more decision makers. Whereas we tend to be smaller where we are, and there's pros and cons of that. One of the pros is that we are very agile, and it's always surprised me and really kind of it's been a great sign. But if we want to do something one day, everyone's very quick to support and get on board, and actually everyone's very close together. We're not in different buildings, we're all in the same building. And it might be a collaboration between marketing and retail or commercial or the media team. And people can get together really quickly. And we just test stuff and we make decisions really quickly. There is a lot of autonomy within the club. You're trusted to get on and do your job. And there's a lack of kind of politics and red tape. And then people are encouraged to experiment and try new things. So there's a real kind of collaborative, creative culture at the club, and I think that sets us apart, and we can do things really, really quickly in a supportive way.
Can you give me some examples of where you're using data to really help progress innovation at the club?
Yeah, I mean, when I first joined, we sent out an awful lot of emails, and some of these weren't particularly well targeted, let's just say. So, and I realised we had a lot of contacts on our email database that weren't maybe as engaged as they should be. So it may sound simple, but one of the things we really wanted to do is look at marketing preferences and understand our email customer segment base better. So yeah, we set about, we did a lot of analysis on our email volumes and traffic and understanding who these people were. And we essentially created an email preference center where people could choose what kind of information they wanted to hear about. So that could be retail, that could have been ticketing, that could have been other things as well. So that was a real collaboration piece with marketing. It had a commercial element to it because we could tell we had a lot more of an engaged email database than we had it before. And that's worked out really well. Our email volumes have gone down, our engagement's gone up. And actually, the marketing team has been able to send a lot more specific content to the people that really want to see it as well.
That's great. Yeah. And as a marketing person, you can imagine that's music to my ears.
Yeah, exactly.
So customization, personalization is definitely the way of the future. And I think technology, AI, data analytics are really allowing us to do a lot more of that personalization. Do you see technology and AI kind of playing a role in the future of where you see data headed at the club?
Yeah, AI is a really interesting one at the moment. And I speak to a lot of clubs and I speak to a lot of companies around what products there are out there, where different clubs are going. I think the way I'd look at it is you have to build the foundations first and make them solid before you can really make the most out of AI. And when I say about building solid foundations, having a real core data set, knowing your customers, feeding into one central place, your retail data, your ticketing data, your turnstile entry data, your website data. So I think the key thing for me would be AI to build a good data warehouse first, because AI is only going to be as good as the data you feed into it. I think there's two elements to AI. I think from a club perspective, I think is about making data more accessible. One of the things that we realize is we probably want to take away a lot of the emphasis on data teams to provide answers to people. One thing I've realized working at the club is people are really curious about data and they have lots of questions. But at the moment, we're the barrier where there's 2 of us in the data team, and it obviously takes us time to respond to requests and generate reports. Whereas in an ideal world, the data would all be there so that anyone can ask a question about the data in a kind of easy to use question tool. And it'd be the AI that can make the most sense of the data. Also, what I tend to find in the world of football is people know their stuff. And I'm often asked about, what bit of data did you tell someone they didn't know? And actually that can be quite a struggle, because I found the people at the club are incredibly knowledgeable about what products sell, what email campaigns work, ticketing information. The big challenge will be the unknown unknowns. So it's about answering questions people didn't think was a question and giving an answer that kind of really genuinely surprises them. And that can be a challenge in football. So that would be on the club side. And I guess from a supporter side, again, it's about making data more accessible. And they can ask free text questions. And football fans are very passionate around knowledge and information, and what time's this kicking off? What do I need for that? Or when's the last time we won this? And then there's players' data. So there's so many elements that could be put together with the right tools. But I think, generally speaking, clubs are resourcing at the moment, building their data sets before overlaying it with any AI at the moment. Some of the bigger clubs are doing a lot of stuff with AI, but probably the smaller clubs aren't there yet.
But you're absolutely right when it comes to fans. I mean, football's like a religion, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's absolutely essential for the data to be right, because if they make the query using a natural language model or an AI chatbot, and what comes back isn't 100% accurate, then you've already lost trust, haven't you?
Exactly.
So it's building those front ends on a data warehouse where you're very confident that the back end is accurate, compliant, trustworthy data, right?
And I think the general point, not just about AI, but other tools, is about running before you can walk. And actually having that integrity is critical, data quality, ensuring that's right first, before having too many bolt-ons that at the moment it's quite difficult to give you a tangible benefit. I think that's the other thing. I think in terms of a club, if you're going to invest money in something, you need to try and understand the so what, or the tangible outcome of that. And I think that's quite difficult at the moment with AI.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the more and more there's the request of, where's the business case? What's the return on investment on this? How can you justify the cost? But it's moving so fast that if you don't move with it, the danger is you'll get left behind.
Exactly. And I think a lot of companies are one thing I've noticed that many companies want to work with football clubs. And again, it's trying to choose the right people to work with at the right time. And it's coming back to getting your basics right first.
Yeah, reliable, valid, good, strong data. Okay, I've got one question for you, and that's just about surprises. Have you ever been surprised by something that, either was in the data set that you didn't expect? You talked a little bit about the unknowns, right? And I think that's maybe where we are in terms of a critical juncture of the role that data is going to play in the future when it comes to AI. There are a lot of unknowns, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk to some experience you have of either being surprised or where you expect to be surprised in the future, maybe?
Yeah, and I maybe I'll counter that to start with, that a lot of our time is spent validating hunches, or and I say the people who run the different departments know their stuff, and quite occasionally people come to and say, look, we think this is true, can you confirm this? And I say the vast majority of the time we're providing data that does confirm things. And I'll give an example of that, but Alice and my team just spent a good number of weeks on a project on turnstile entry data. And it's a very thorough piece of work looking at 3 years of turnstile data. Every person that's come in over 3 years, she knew about it. And she'd cut it down, she sliced it down by genders, age, distance from ground, season ticket, non-season ticket holders, away fan, different types of game, Premier League fans, non-Premier League types of fans. And the funny things that we sort of joked about was there wasn't any major surprises, other than saying that people are generally coming to the stadium later because of all the stuff we're putting on outside the stadium, like the entertainment and stuff like that. So there's a lot of times we're trying to reinforce a perception, or the supporters might say, we're coming in later, or we're seeing this or that. So sometimes good having the data to back that up. So in terms of the unknown stuff, that's something that we are trying to look for, that golden nugget that people don't know about. But sometimes it's the more simple things that are surprising. And part of my job is every week, or I'm looking at new memberships coming in, building up these patterns of seeing, well, our membership base was 100% UK based 4 years ago. Now we're starting to get more global fans coming into our normal standard membership. We've got a global membership. This is our UK membership fan. And there's one particular country that stood out, and I don't know why, Chile. I thought, as much as I can try and analyse, I thought, actually, I'm going to give myself permission just to get in contact with this person from Chile and say, you're from Chile, you've just bought a Junior Cherries membership. What's going on there? And actually, sometimes you're just looking data all the time and you see this anomaly, you just think, I just want to ask the question. And I contacted this fan, and it turns out that their son had been playing FIFA and he'd chosen Bournemouth as his team. And then since that time, he'd become a big fan. And it actually got to the point where I met him and his son. He came in from Chile and came to the Bournemouth game. And I ended up just taking him around Bournemouth in my car and just really getting to know this name that I saw in the data. Mm. And it kind of reminded me of the power of the kind of global potential that the club has got. We're seeing a lot more American fans, or generally global fans. Sometimes that's more to do with the players we've got. Sometimes it's to do with a documentary on TV. Other times it's their son playing FIFA and picking a team. And I remember driving him around to Sandbank, etc. His son was in the back, and he knew more about Bournemouth than I knew about Bournemouth. He knew all the players' names, knew all the reserve team players' names. And I think it was just a reminder for me about the humanisation of data. And it's very easy when you're doing a data job to see lines and rows and numbers. But actually, there's loads of stories behind that data. And I think that's probably really crucial with data and storytelling. Actually, it's not just about the totals and the amounts and what are the stories behind the data. And I think there's probably a time going forward now where we're really going to try and use data as a bit of a storytelling piece as well, to bring that to life. And I think that's going to be one thing I'm really going to be focusing on as well. Yeah.
Now that's exciting.
Yeah.
But just tracking back quickly, because we talked before about personalisation, I don't think your average Junior Cherries fan club registrant would expect to get a phone call from, somebody.
Yeah, they were surprised.
Somebody in the club business operations to say, why have you signed up?
Yeah.
And then that leading to a trip to Bournemouth. So that's pretty unique.
Yeah, and I think it was just a lesson to me, actually, just if I see stuff that looks different, just do something with it and actually understand the story. And I think there's a lot more stories out there. I think it's just finding those people. And the people that I've contacted have been, number one, really amazed that I've contacted them. But number two, just been really passionate about the club. And it's sometimes forgetting that we have lots of very, very, very passionate fans out there all across the world. And they're more than just a number on the screen. They've had a journey, they've had a story. So it's just a reminder to me is that as a fan myself, it's really important we pick out these different stories around the world.
Yeah. And I think that's where you're talking on the intersection between the back office and the front office, right?
Exactly,
so the data and actually the customer experience, or the fan or the spectator experience.
Exactly,
so that's very exciting. One last question then. Thinking about the future and looking at the data and looking at the trends, what do you think is next for the club?
I think there's, in terms of strategy for football, having spoken to other clubs, and definitely for our club, it's touching back on that personalisation bit, is that over the years we've had a small stadium and we tend to have similar behaviour. We have a proportion of season tickets holders who have been season ticket holders for a number of years. Our fan base is quite steady. We've got lots of people that want to come to more games. But actually, it's the personalisation bit that's going to be really crucial. So bringing all that data together and building a centralised place where we can understand the journey of a supporter. So we know they're a season ticket holder. We know that they like buying stuff from the shop. They know that they like to come to the ground at this particular time. at some point, maybe a loyalty system where, we can see what food they like. And again, it's not from a big brother perspective. It's all around personalisation and offering people things that they want to have or would like to have. And actually, just from a marketing perspective, we're starting to tailor things even more. And you could bolt on some AI stuff, some predictive stuff there to say, well, actually, you bought these products. Maybe we think you'd like these products. So I think that's definitely the way forward in terms of offering fans offers or more stuff that's personalised to them. Like some fans that will come to a game at a certain time every week, and we know this through the data, and they don't buy stuff from retail, they don't buy food and drink. There's other stuff that want to buy stuff, but they just don't know it's there, or we may want to offer them a discount or those kind of things. So yeah, definitely the future is more personalisation, understanding our fans better, and offering them products and services that kind of fit with them.
So ultimately, using data to make smarter decisions, which is what this podcast is all about.
Exactly.
So Rich Cooper, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been fantastic.
No worries, it's been great. Thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.